You're listening to another ASCI Lounge podcast.
Welcome back to the ASCI Lounge. I'm Monique Fenech from Australasian Supply Chain Institute, and joining us on the ASCI Lounge today is Annette Sando, Supply Chain Director. Welcome, Annette.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
Annette is an accomplished, financially astute supply chain professional who has held a range of leadership and GM roles in complex supply chains in Australia. So we're really pleased to bring Annette to the lounge today. She has a broad experience in manufacturing management, lean and agile thinking development, S&OP and IBP, inventory planning, warehousing, freight and importing, process improvements, and systems integration and implementation. And the reason why we wanted to invite you, Annette, to the lounge today is to share with our members and listeners, being a leader of learning. So Annette is probably the only person that I'm aware of in Australia that has completed all three APICS certifications. So we're keen to understand in this podcast why the APICS certifications complement an already successful supply chain career and why you think it might set great examples for those around us. So, and it's probably best to start at the beginning and explain to us where you get your accent from and where did you do your undergraduate study to begin with?
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you, Monique. I think I have got a fairly unique accent. Look, I was born in the northeast of England, in Newcastle, so I'm officially a Geordie, but anyone who knows a Geordie will know that my accent no longer really sounds that way. I did my undergraduate in Cambridge, so I spent 4 years in total down in Cambridge, so I picked up a bit of the southern accent at that point in time. And then I went and worked in South Africa for just over a year as well. So I've now got a real mixture where if I'm in the UK, people think I actually sound Australian, having lived over here for 20 odd years. But,
yes, that's right.
When I'm in Australia, everyone knows I'm not really Australian, and they can pick a variety of different accents. So yeah, a bit of variety there.
And what was your undergraduate study?
So I studied material science and metallurgy. With a little bit of psychology of behaviour in there as well, and some chemistry and physics and some pure maths. So in Cambridge, that's a natural sciences degree. I then went on and did a 1-year postgraduate in manufacturing and management, which was an amazing course and really got us out around industry at a very young age to experience different aspects of the real world.
And so the common question really is, Annette, like, how did you get into supply chain? And because a lot of people do fall into supply chain, but there must have been an inkling at that stage experiencing those types of manufacturing environments. Was that the time when it clicked to you, or was it much, much later?
Yeah, I think it's really quite interesting as to, there's two questions there for me. One is, what is supply chain? And even today, there are very large differences in definition that I come across on a very regular basis. And then there's the fact that back in the 1900s, which is when it was, supply chain really wasn't seen as the discipline that it is today. So supply chain has progressed and grown considerably in the last 25 years. So the first time that I realised I was working in supply chain was probably when I was in South Africa, and I was looking at taking the organisation off paper-based planning onto a planning system, and also looking at lean and Kanban systems and implementing visual systems. So at the time, I saw it largely as working in operations, but now I see that as working in a core part of the supply chain.
So did you study APICS in South Africa, or did you wait till you came to Australia for that?
No, look, I don't think I'd actually heard of APICS in South Africa. Well aware now that they do exist over there and that they've got a strong organisation over there. But it was actually when I was over here working in the automotive industry and doing various roles, but largely trying to streamline and ensure timely and cost-effective manufacturing and delivery of wiring looms from the overseas manufacturing sites to the Australian car manufacturers, that I really appreciated that I'd ended up working in a field and really enjoying the field that my degree and my postgraduate hadn't really set me up for. So I had no formal qualifications, and I was fundamentally just using common sense and I suppose making it up as I went along. So I was aware at the time of a saying that I know Richard Pratt used to very much believe in, so much so he printed it on people's caps and shirts and things at Visy. But that saying is that you don't know what you don't know. And
yes,
so
it's a good one.
I was very aware that although I seemed to be doing okay at making things up as I went along, that I really didn't know what I didn't know, and that I wanted to get some more formal qualifications to try and find out what it was I didn't know, and then utilise that in the workplace.
Yeah, that was back in 2002 when you studied the Certified in Production and Inventory Management. And I think that was really a boom period for ASCI, our not-for-profit community in that time. There was so many, manufacturing was going really, really well. There was a lot of companies putting all their people through the CPIM. So you must have formed some good relationships with people at that time while you were studying too.
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think I finished my study or first qualified in 2002. So I'd probably have started, I'm guessing, 18 or so months before that. But absolutely, there were some relationships that I developed during that time that I still maintain to this time, and very much people that when I come across them at networking events, etc., it's wonderful to catch up with them. And occasionally I do come across them in the workplace as well. So, look, you can build some really good relationships with the people that you're studying with, but also with the people who were delivering the classes at the time. I'm still very much in touch with a number of them as well.
Yeah, well, that's right, because you then went on to become a facilitator in the CPIM, but that was after, of course, you did the end-to-end supply chain certification. Am I right, in 2006?
Yeah, so I did CSCP. I was already doing some facilitation of CPIM, and I was definitely on the local Victorian board by that point in time. And one of the main reasons I wanted to do CSCP was that it was a new qualification to Australia at that point in time. And what we were looking to do was obviously build up people that had a knowledge base in CSCP to understand how we were going to facilitate delivering that course here in Australia. So, look, it was a time when I was very much involved in what APICS, as we were at the time, but ASCI now, was doing at a board level and or at a local regional level, but at a board level at that regional level, and in facilitation as well.
So I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who you taught, and they're remembering that time, which is really lovely. So I hope that you've had the same impact on them as your facilitators had on you, because now with the CSCP, there's over 20,000 supply chain experts around the world with that certification. So it's really, really gone gangbusters since back in the day, and more than ever relevant.
Yeah,
yes.
It is so relevant. I mean, CPIM, hugely relevant to your own business and how you run and organise and deliver success within your own organisation. But CSCP really, I found when I went on to become a GM supply chain and was really required to look outside of the own four walls and out to customer and supplier relationships, and really the effective management of those, that CSCP offered a lot to be drawn on.
Yeah. And I think today, in the global marketplace within which we work, the CSCP will also help with those sort of global relationships as well. I know we're working chronologically through this, but the CLTD, which is the Logistics, Transport and Distribution certification for APICS, was only a recent development, as I mean to say 2017 when you studied it, Annette, and you studied it via self-study. So how was that experience?
Yeah, look, it was actually really good. I mean, I'd identified for a while, a number of years, that from a transport and distribution perspective, it's touched on in the other material, but really not focused on it as much as you can absolutely be an expert in transport and logistics and not in the planning side of the business and the production side. So I was really keen when this qualification came about to understand, did it fill almost that gap in the learning suite? And so I was very keen to do it. And because I'd had many years by that point in time actually with warehouses and trucking and all of the distribution aspects, I figured it was a good opportunity to try the online method of learning as opposed to the more face-to-face method. And look, it was a great experience. As with a lot of these things, you might have been working in that field for 20 years, but you still always learn something when you do these courses. And I very much remember when I was delivering CPIM, a very learned individual coming along to some of the classes. And when she walked in, I thought, oh my goodness, what are we going to cover here, and how are we going to help ensure that she remains interested throughout the 4 or 5 days. But she said that even having spent 20 odd years in supply chain herself and wanting to come along actually to see what the course content was and to understand what the course was that she was putting a lot of her team through, she said it was a wonderful experience just for her to sit in and think about the theory again, learn some new theory actually as well, but to take the time out to really consider what it meant for her team and how doing these courses was going to enable her to then further the progression for her team. So
wow,
it doesn't matter how many years you've had in the business, you can still learn from doing these qualifications, absolutely.
And I would like her to be my manager, because that is really walking the walk. And I think as leaders in supply chain, just sending your people onto courses is one thing, but to actually experience it with them on some level, and that actually, that's where you get your value, is where you can really start using it in your day to day and identify the areas where you might need some improvement together, and be their mentors.
Absolutely, because it means that if you know what they're studying, you then really know the opportunities to challenge them in their day-to-day roles and the opportunities to support them to progress and really leverage the theory that they're learning. Because, it's been shown over and over again that it's one thing to hear something and answer a few questions about it, but actually being given the opportunity to try it in your day-to-day and really experience it is where you lock in that knowledge and then start to leverage that knowledge onto greater things.
And I want to just touch on giving back to the supply chain community for a minute, Annette, and to really recognise and celebrate what you've achieved in your career for the community. You've spent some time in facilitation roles for APICS, as we've mentioned, and teaching those students to prepare for APICS certification exams. But you've also, as you touched on briefly, represented our not-for-profit community as the Victorian chapter president, and then later the president of what we were then apicsAU and now ASCI. What is it about supply chain that makes you want to give back? What is it that you channeled for that to all take place for us?
Yeah, look, I think for me, I appreciated very early on that the APICS community back in that time around 2000 was very largely run by volunteers. There weren't many people that were actually, full-time staff or paid for the hours that they put in. And I know that I learned and developed a lot, and we talked a little bit about the relationships and the actual content that I learned. And I felt that for me, it really did set me up for my supply chain career as a subject matter expert, and to be able to facilitate others to have the same opportunities, I felt was really important because, others had done it for me. And I wanted to do my bit to enable others to get that same education and get the same insights. And I think it's one of those things that as human beings, a lot of us do actually get a real sense of enjoyment and fulfillment out of volunteering and sharing our knowledge and our experiences. And so it's hopefully beneficial for the people that are making use of the services that are being offered. But I think it's also good for yourself and for your soul and to feel that you are contributing to society as a whole, as opposed to just, contributing in the workplace.
What's your advice to other leaders listening to this podcast who are managing supply chain teams of people, either in operations, logistics, or procurement? What can you tell them that's going to help them on this journey?
Yeah, look, it's I put a little bit of thought into this around what is it that I try and do when I go into an organisation, and I was out for drinks the other night with some old team members that were part of my team 3 years ago. And we built such a great, strong team at that point in time that we still catch up. We still love catching up. And, it's really important to us. So, to be able to build a team that is that strong where the relationships, continue on long beyond the workplace is wonderful. And I think that for me, my method of building a team and leading a team. So for me, there's a difference between being a leader and a manager. And a leader for me is someone that early on or as early as feasible understands what the problems are that your team sees need solving, but also understand what the aspirations are and what the problems are that the business leaders see as needing solving. And then to create a shared vision with your team. So I'm a big fan of running a few small workshops and creating a transformation map, a vision map, which actually captures what it is that you and your team are going to harness all of your efforts around delivering. And once you've created that, and that in its own right doesn't have to take months and months to create it, it can really be a fairly quick creation of what's the vision and what are the deliverables going to be along the way for that vision. Then it's all around harnessing around that as a team and understanding what the capabilities are that the team has, what the skills are that they've got, and what the knowledge is that's already owned, but also importantly understanding what those gaps are and working together as a team to fill those gaps, whether they be theoretical knowledge, whether they be personal understanding, team bonding. So there's a lot that can be done to understand your own personal journey that you need to go on. How ready are you for a journey of change? Have you got change management skills? What personal development do you need? What motivates you as an individual? Are you actually in the right job, or have you just ended up in a job and perhaps you're not really leveraging your real strengths and your core? So for me, to build that strong team to deliver change, and you do need a strong team to deliver change, because as much as we, I think, all appreciate that change is a constant, it's not always easy, and quite often it's not easy, and one person definitely cannot do it on their own. So you need to have a team that knows each other well enough, opens up, is honest, and will pick each other up on those tough days, but we'll also really celebrate the wins, whether they be little wins that you go and celebrate with a coffee at the local cafe, or whether they be a bit larger. But, celebrate those wins and really bring that team, because change has and always will be a constant. And it's a required constant to either get ahead or stay ahead. So we need to build people that are able to thrive in that constantly changing environment. And this means that they need to know what they enjoy, be good at what they do, and put them in the positions as a team player where they can actually leverage their real skills and what they love doing. It's about investing the time in personal insights as well as understanding team dynamics. And then with a strong team and management understanding the message and the journey and supporting that message and journey that is to be delivered, I think you're set up to do the best that you and your teams can do to deliver that for the organisation.
Wow, there's so much to unpack in that, Annette, and I'm sure that, people will be downloading this podcast over and over again and taking notes, because what you've said's been there's a lot of clarity in your leadership advice, and I think that there's something in that for everyone, even if they take part of what you've just said into and apply it to their own approach, then that's going to be great for their teams. So thank you so much for that answer.
You're welcome.
I'm really excited, Annette, to announce that the CEO of APICS is coming to Australia next year. And
yes.
So I'll share with members a little bit about that. So Abe Eshkenazi is the CEO of Association for Supply Chain Management, which was previously APICS and has been rebranded to ASCM. It's been, I think 2015 was the last time that Abe visited Australia. But as part of the premier channel partner for APICS in Australia, Abe has given us some great news that he'll be out here next April. And that coincides with the really, really large expo event that's happening in Melbourne at the time, Megatrans. And so Abe's been invited to keynote at Megatrans on the very first day. There'll be a supply chain stream with a couple of panel keynotes and panel presentations, and Abe will be doing the first keynote at 11 o'clock for that stream. And I'm pleased to announce that Annette Sando has offered to, or I've actually invited Annette to introduce Abe to the stage, because there is no other fitting person, I think, in Australia besides yourself, Annette, to actually take on that role. And you've happily accepted.
Absolutely. It'll be an honour to do that. Abe's a wonderful individual. I've had the privilege of meeting him a couple of times when I was on the board of APICS in Australia. So we do know each other, and he always has some really great insight. So I have no doubt that his keynote will be well worth listening to.
Yeah, and he really wants to come and address the topic of professional development and talk about skills gaps, and talk about really motivate everybody to be leaders of learning and get back into thinking about best practice as much as possible. With all the change, like you said, that's taking place in our space, it's great to have that best practice knowledge to fall back on. What would I do in this situation usually? And just apply your principles to each of the decisions that you make. So that'll be a strong message that Abe makes when he comes out. And I'm so pleased you accepted our invitation, Annette.
No, thank you for the offer. It's an honour.
All right, and thanks for joining us on the ASCI Lounge. Hopefully you'll be back and we can talk some more about your leadership style, Annette, because I think there's a lot there that we can continue to discuss with our member base. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Monique, and it was a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you.
And you can find out more about the APICS certifications on the ASCI website, where there's pricing as well as information about what's included in the self-study learning systems. There's quite a bit that you can use in an online embedded e-reader or e-downloads that can run right across any device. So there's quizzes and tests, more than 800 online test questions actually. There's an online resource centre with videos and case studies. So it is a really, really great resource for any of those 3 certifications that we discussed today. So get online and have a look at some of those options for you. Thanks for joining us today, and bye for now.